Okay, good evening. I hope you and all of you and your families are safe and healthy. My name is Nick Higgins. I'm the Chief Librarian at the Brooklyn Public Library. We are honored to be working today with Common Cause New York and be joined by all these magnificent panelists that we'll hear from in a little bit. And we're delighted to be partnering with like-minded organizations that are dedicated to helping educate voters, and we're proud to be a forum for these conversations and for broader civic engagement around issues that matter to people in our communities. Our 59 libraries across Brooklyn reach every neighborhood, and for a lot of the communities that we serve, our libraries are anchors in their neighborhoods where people of all backgrounds can come together in a shared community space to address some of the challenges that they face each and every day, places where they can celebrate what's very joyful about living in their communities, and to, most importantly, to learn from one another and build lifelong relationships. And we view this civic engagement role as one of our greatest strengths in our identity, and we host conversations between community leaders and the public to dive deeper into issues that are coming up around elections. We have long been activated as polling sites for primaries and general elections. And just this last summer and fall, we hosted several virtual town halls with the public and ACLU to come together and talk about what a Brooklyn-born 28th Amendment to the Constitution should be and should look like. And we look forward to doing more civic engagement work like this down the line, including events like this one this evening with Common Cause New York. So thank you all for being here. It's good to see you. Have a joyful and safe holiday season, and thanks a lot, and see you at the library.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Dugar. I am the Director of Outreach and Education for Rank the Vote NYC. I've spent the last 10 years working in the Bay Area of California and across the state on ranked choice voting, both the implementation and advocacy for, as well as helping candidates win under RCV. So I'm excited to be joining you all and helping to lead the education effort through Rank the Vote NYC. So let's jump into this program. What is ranked choice voting, and what will your ballot look like? Let's go to, yes, the PowerPoint. And let's go to the next slide. So we're going over a quick recap of what's happening in your local elections. Next slide. So how did we get here? In 2019, the City Council called for a Charter Revision Commission to review a wide scope of issues and suggest changes to the city charter, which, as you know, is essentially the city's constitution. Over the course of several months, the commission held multiple public hearings, heard from experts, and accepted testimony on a wide variety of issues. Throughout this process, hundreds of concerned citizens and organizations came out to offer support on many different issues. One of the issues that received the most support through that hearing process was ranked choice voting. The commission voted 14-1 to place ranked choice voting on for the primaries and special elections on the November 19th ballot. And last year, RCV question 1 was passed by the voters with over 73% of the vote, and will be implemented in the elections coming up next year. Next slide. So why RCV, why now? Under the current system of voting, a council member wins with what we call a plurality. That means they get the highest percentage of the vote. In some instances, that means a council member can win with as little as 20% of the vote, meaning 80% of the voters in that district voted for someone else. In addition to that, with the conjunction of the robust campaign finance system that's been implemented and the new term limits, there's going to be a wealth of candidates, as we see tonight, from various backgrounds running for office, and under the traditional system, risk splitting the vote. Next slide. So let's talk quickly about what's changing. So starting on January 1st, as I mentioned, all primary and special elections for city council, borough president, public advocate, comptroller, and mayor will use ranked choice voting. Under ranked choice voting, runoffs are eliminated, and a candidate needs 50% plus one of the vote to win. So now you as voters will have the opportunity to rank up to 5 candidates, including a write-in if you choose. Next slide. So this is kind of a mock-up of a ranked choice ballot. What is ranked choice voting? Ranked choice voting, you get to vote for up to 5 candidates. Your first candidate is the candidate that you love. It's usually the candidate that you'll go out and volunteer for, that you'll donate to. The second candidate is the candidate that you like. You know, you may not love them as much as that first candidate, but you still like the issues that they're talking about. You still like the way that they're reaching out to you as voters. And so your third choice is the candidate that, third and fourth choice that you kind of like. You know, they're not necessarily your favorite, but you'd be okay with them as your council member or as your elected official. And then your fifth choice is the candidate who, you know, isn't really my cup of tea, but I'd much rather have them than somebody else. And so that is your 5 rankings. We're going to go really quickly through an explainer video. Take it away. I think you need to turn on the volume. We still can't hear it.
Ranked choice voting explained. Dinosaur edition. Let's vote for who we want at the top of the food chain. The Parasaurolophus, the Brachiosaurus, or T-Rex. In regular voting, whoever gets the most votes wins. But in ranked choice voting, you get to order the candidates.
T-Rex is my favorite, but if it loses, I'd want the Brachiosaurus and then the Parasaurolophus.
Every voter does the same. In this case, no one has a majority. The Parasaurolophus gets eliminated because it has the least amount of first place votes. But now we go to its voters' second choice votes and add them to the Brachiosaurus. T-Rex still has 4 votes, but the Brachiosaurus has 6. Since the Brachiosaurus has more than 50% of the vote, it becomes the ruler of the land before time.
Awesome. So that's just a quick explainer. Again, that's under the system where you vote for your top 3. In New York, you all will be voting for your top 5 choices. So here is an example of what your ballot could look like. It's being finalized right now by the BOE, but here you'll see the grid to the right, where you get to fill in the bubble for your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth choice candidates. Again, this is a mock ballot, so these are not real candidates and they're not real political parties. It's just an example of what the ballot in New York is likely to look like. Next slide. So under ranked choice voting, if a candidate wins 50% plus one of the vote in the first round, they win. The tally process does not kick in. But if no candidate reaches 50% plus one of first choice votes, then we go through the tabulation process, which will round by round go through and add the second and third place votes as we saw previously. Next slide. So why should voters use their rankings? It gives you more choice and more power. Even if your favorite candidate doesn't win, you still have a say in who's elected. You can vote your conscience without worrying about wasting your vote. And your second, third, fourth, and fifth choice votes never hurt your favorite candidate. Next slide. So just quickly, we'll go over some frequently asked questions. How many candidates do you rank? You can rank up to 5 candidates. You can rank 1 candidate, you can rank 5, or anywhere in between. Next slide. Do you have to use all 5 rankings? No. Again, as I said, you can rank as few candidates as you like. If there's one candidate you feel strongly about and you dislike, and other candidates you like, it's your right to rank those candidates and not all of them. Can you rank a candidate more than once? Yes, but it does not help your candidate. That vote will only count for a candidate once. Next slide. Does it hurt your favorite candidate to have a second choice? Again, if you mark a candidate as your first choice, your second, third, fourth, or fifth choice does not kick in unless that first choice candidate is eliminated. Next slide. So just some essentials to remember. Starting next year, voters will have the opportunity to rank their top 5 candidates for mayor, comptroller, public advocate, borough president, and city council. Why rank? Because you're not wasting your vote. You're not accidentally helping to elect someone who you don't support. There's no vote splitting, and there's no someone being elected with less than a majority. Here's our info. This session will be posted on our website along with this PowerPoint. And you can reach us at the email address or the phone number provided if you would like us to do trainings to your community groups or anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started unless any of our women or men or folk behind the curtain have any other technical stuff we need to go through. If not, going once, going twice. Excellent. We're going to move forward. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lurie Daniel Favors, and I am the Interim Executive Director at the Center for Law and Social Justice at the Medgar College of the City University of New York. And it is my distinguished honor to be able to moderate this conversation today. I think this is just such a wonderful, ripe way of having this discussion. And I want to let everyone know from the outset, this is not a debate. This is a forum for conversation and for discussion. And, you know, as I've explained to my 13-year-old and my 7-year-old, if you can play spades or bid whiz, which is one of the games is a little old for them, or if you have had to figure out what your family is going to eat for dinner on a weekend when everyone gets a choice, if that happens in your house, you too can rank the vote. So I'm so glad and appreciative to you, Sean, for explaining that. And I just like to say that at the outset so that we can lower some of the barriers that can sometimes pop up in our own minds about something that's new and something that's different and something that we're going to experience in the city of New York for the first time. In lieu of reading off bios of these wonderful, phenomenal candidates, because they are many of them, the organizers decided, you know, we're all online right now and you can Google them and find out all about them, because if I were to read any of their bios, we would literally eat up all of the time. And we really want to use this as an educational moment to dive right in. And so we are going to do that. And we're going to begin with a series of questions and then allow for closing statements at the end of the conversation. And so I want to dive right in and referencing the referendum that brought us to this place. Ranked choice voting passed overwhelmingly in the 2019 ballot initiative, with 70% of the voters choosing to support the referendum. According to the Board of Elections, ranked choice voting actually won nearly every Black, or majority Black, Latino, or Asian assembly district, with many supporting 75% or more in favor of the proposal. And so my question to each of the candidates is, how do you see ranked choice voting as an advantage for your campaign? And I'm going to start in the way you are appearing on my screen. Mr. Edwards, we are going to start with you. If you could let us know how you think ranked choice voting is an advantage to your campaign.
Well, I was very excited to see that it passed, specifically because my other competitors, most of them are sitting electeds, and realizing that Brooklyn is a huge place and we have to get to every community, every diverse ethnic background. It gave me an excitement to know that they have to work just as hard as I do to get into the face and to get voters to understand what my path and where I want to lead Brooklyn. So for me, I was extremely excited about this passing, because it does, I think, level the playing field. It does give folks an opportunity to express themselves thoroughly, and gives us all a chance to be able to present ourselves across the board.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Reynoso, next you're up.
Yeah, I think the advantage is that I get to run on who I am and run alongside these great people that I consider friends. You know, I work with Robert Cornegy, who I consider a great friend. Khari Edwards, you know, if he plays basketball the way he's going to run this campaign, then I'm going to be perfectly fine. And then we have Joanne Simon, who's somebody that I've worked with and is part of, like, you know, Team Nydia. We have, Kim Council, who's running, who I've been supportive of in the past and love the work that she's done in other parts of Brooklyn. These are all people I get along with. I think we're all trying to do well for Brooklyn, and to be able to know that we're going to be focusing on ourselves and not on, you know, mudslinging and all this stuff that is more common in Brooklyn, I think is going to be good for all of us and our hearts. So I'm actually looking forward to that.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Ms. Fields, coming to you next. How do you see ranked choice voting as an advantage to your campaign?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I think it's a good thing. Ranked choice voting is a way to disrupt the political machine and level the playing field. So instead of seasoned politicians deciding on who occupies the next seat, it allows activists and outsiders like myself to come in and participate and actually have a chance at winning. So I support it, you know, all the way, and I'm glad it's happening.
Thank you for that. Ms. Council, you're next.
Thank you, and thank everybody for having this. And I guess I would probably echo what Antonio was saying. I think, and particularly after the last 4 years of discourse in the United States, it's an exciting concept to have a race where there's civility and where people respect the people who they're running for, and we can focus on the issues. And it also, you know, it gives you an opportunity. If you're having a conversation with someone and they don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, you know, hey, I can be your number two. But it also forces you to, you know, to hit all areas of the community. It forces you to have conversations with people that you know, may not necessarily consider, so that you can expand your reach. So I'm excited about the possibilities that exist under this new program.
Excellent. And Assemblymember Simon, how about you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for, and I'm so glad to see everyone here tonight. And thank you very much, Ms. Favors. You know, I think that what I like about ranked choice voting is it allows us to talk about our race, who we are, what we bring to the table, and really change that conversation instead of being an us versus them situation in the way that it is traditionally. And I also think that the statistics have shown, for example, that ranked choice voting has opened the doors for many women in office. And I think if there is anything we need in our political dialogue and in leadership, we need more women in public office, particularly in senior levels.
Thank you. And Councilmember Cornegy, how about you? How is this an advantage for your campaign? Can you unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I don't know why I was the only one muted, but that's a whole nother story. We can talk about that later. I think it gives voters the opportunity to actually focus on people's mission and vision for the borough, right? So this is great for voters. I don't know about how great it is for me or other candidates, but it's certainly great for the voters to be able to really look at what accomplishments that people that are running for office have had and what their vision is. So really, I like the fact that voters really get a chance to get to know people outside of, kind of intermingling ideas and thoughts. And you can really stay focused on candidates through this ranked choice process.
Thank you for that. And for the record, I do not control the mute button. You must all unmute yourself.
Just saying.
Just
that was me. That was me, Robert. That was me.
No doubt it was Antonio.
Mr. Ramos, if we could hear from you, please, as to how you think this type of voting is a benefit to your campaign.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with such pristine individuals who I do know. Like Antonio said, it's great to be here with you and speaking. Hi, Kim, and everybody else. When it comes to ranked choice voting, I was very excited when it passed. I mean, it does help just normal citizens that want to run and want to get their ideas across. And, it gives you that opportunity to put yourself out there, run, and not have to worry about all of the other things that you need for a campaign. And you deal with that. But it gives you that opportunity to reach out to voters. It gives the voters an opportunity to have choices, right? So if they're looking at everybody and they're saying, oh, well, I like him, but I like him, I like him, or I like her, they don't have to totally just throw everybody else out. They can rank, they can put who they want first and second. And like the other candidate said, it forces us to go to everybody in the borough. And if you're a citywide candidate, to every person in New York City to make your case. Because if you're not somebody's number one, you become the number two. And that helps you. And it makes you not have to, people that are there, incumbents will be like, oh, I don't need to, I can use my 3,000 votes. I don't need to reach out to anybody else. No, this makes you have to go outside, makes you have to speak to everyone. And you can't just rely on your base. You have to go to everybody, speak to everybody. And that's good for you as a candidate, that's good for the city, it's good for the residents to be able to hear from everyone and feel that their vote is going to be worth something and worthy.
Thank you for that. And I note that I do believe we lost Ms. Council, and so hopefully she'll be able to rejoin us. But having sort of understood from each of you how you think this type of voting system can benefit your campaign, I'd like to see some of this in action. So I want you to rank for us, what are your top 5 issues for the borough of Brooklyn? And I'm going to go in the reverse order. I'm starting at this row and not that row. So that means Councilmember Cornegy, I'm coming to you first. What are your top 5 ranked issues for the borough of Brooklyn?
Certainly job creation, safety, affordable housing, good quality education, and a robust senior service program.
I love it. Thank you. Mr. Ramos, coming to you next. Your top 5 issues for Brooklyn in ranked order.
I'd have to say education. I think that's the stepping stone for everybody, making it equal within the city, no matter what public school you go to, and a free education when it comes to college. I also have to look at jobs. Everybody, because of COVID, there's been so much job loss, or people working from home on part-time, and just bringing back the economy. And with, going to the federal government and getting what we deserve for the state, advocating for that. I would also say homelessness. I think homelessness is a big issue. Housing insecurity is a big issue. CUNY students deal with housing insecurity. I've had people I know who are making $40,000 a year having problems living in a shelter. And that shouldn't be. We should not have that. We need more affordable housing. We need to make sure that these developments that come are making sure that housing is being given to people and it's being done on the average medium income of that neighborhood, not of the state, so that they can actually afford these housing. Also, I think New York has to move more toward a green more of a green future. And Brooklyn has a lot of, we just were talking about food insecurity earlier before we came on. And, you know, myself, I've had to deal with, you know, having 3 kids and, you know, making sure that I can put food on the table for them in this time, you know, and also sending money to their mom so that she can take care of them when she's with them. And, you know, you have to deal with that, and everybody's dealing with that. And, you know, it's sad that we have to be on lines to get food and in a country that has, you know, some of the biggest economy, and we're supposed to be such a great nation. And I think we have to do criminal justice reform, and we have to make sure that, you know, Black and brown people are not being, you know, discriminated against and killed for the color of their skin. And the justice system, we have to make sure that, you know, people are not put in jail for petty crimes and things that, you know, they don't have to go to jail for. You know, if you're not a violent criminal, there's things that should be done to help you get to a better life, so that you don't have to be doing these things, that you don't have to be stealing, you don't have to be, you know, selling drugs. If you're given an opportunity, if you're given alternatives to do that, people will take it. And I think we have to do that instead of sending them to jail and then making them, you know, they're gonna come back and sometimes be worse because of the things that go on in jail. And I think it's about people and being human, not just penalizing people for their situation. I think it's more about caring and understanding and helping them get to a better place.
Thank you. And Ms. Fields, I'd like to come to you next. In order of your rank, what do you think are the top 5 issues in your ranked order for the Borough of Brooklyn?
I think that it would be real affordable housing, not these luxury buildings where rent for studio apartments are $2,000 a month. I'm concerned about the homeless as well, because as a formerly homeless person myself, I know the difficulties and struggles that people go through, and I know how difficult it is to get back into the system without supportive services. Public safety, of course, and small businesses, because the COVID is basically did a number on them, and it's going to be difficult for them to bounce back. And so they're going to need a lot of support and services. And healthcare. Healthcare is very important, because without good healthcare and with people losing their healthcare because of the pandemic, it'll be hard for us to get back as well.
Thank you very much. Ms. Simon, or excuse me, Assembly Member, try to keep the titles where I can.
Thank you. I'm okay. You just call me Joanne. It's good. So I think number 1, climate justice. Right? I tend to see everything through a social justice framework. Climate really is everything. It affects our health. It affects the land use. Is a very big issue, and is something clearly that is a charter mandated function for the borough president. Education, in my mind, is another social justice issue. I'm a former teacher of deaf children, and I've worked in education, both in higher ed and elementary education for years, and have been working with people with disabilities primarily. And so I tend to see these issues in that way. Also, obviously, I think we need to engage, right? I think civic engagement with people from all over Brooklyn together is a real issue. I think the reason we have some of the difficulties we have is because we're not engaged, because we don't encourage engagement. We don't give voice to the people whose needs are not being met and whose voices aren't being heard. And I think those issues really, we have to deal with climate, race, gender, and displacement, which of course goes hand in hand with our land use. And then obviously small businesses are a very vibrant part of our communities. They keep our communities safe, and they feed us and they nurture us, and they give us the ability to develop ourselves, and criminal justice as well. But I think all of these things are very linked together.
Councilman Reynoso.
You're on mute, bro. You're on mute.
You would think I would know how to do this already. But no, so first I want to say housing, and I want to include NYCHA and homelessness in the housing. I hope I can do that, but it's just housing is the most important thing that we have to deal with, whether or not our communities can stay together. I think it's going to be very important. Education, the great equalizer, having a great childhood education and moving forward to your education after high school and going to college and universities, or being able to educate yourself in a technical aspect, I think is extremely important, but education, I think is a top tier thing. Investment in public hospitals, specifically when it comes to infant mortality and Black women's health in public hospitals, is something that we really need to talk about. And I think it's something that needs to be highlighted in the borough president's office, or the borough president's office should be looking to help all public hospitals in all of Brooklyn. And I want to keep those three as in an attempt to show that ranked choice voting doesn't need to be 5 issues. But of course, there are more issues than that, but I want to stick with those 3 to really give them some weight.
Excellent use of the subject matter. Mr. Edwards, your top 5 issues in ranked order for the Borough of Brooklyn.
So I agree with most of my colleagues on housing is my first and foremost priority. To Antonio's point, when you look at NYCHA, when you talk about the homelessness issue, when you even talk about a family wanting to have a bigger family, a husband and wife wanting to have a child, there are no more 3 bedrooms available. Like 3 bedrooms are a lost art at some point. And so therefore we have a lot of folks, to Mr. Ramos' point, union workers that I've worked with who make good salaries, have a pension, and then have family shelters. So my first and foremost priority is the housing issues as it pertains to all 3 of them. Being I'm the only healthcare guy on this panel, healthcare, because when we talk about what I've seen, over 600 people pass away at Brookdale Hospital from COVID, the comorbidities that our community is living with. I'm a type 1 diabetic and need a machine to live every day. Healthcare is one of the big priorities. And even when you talk about a child looking at a board in a classroom with no glasses and wondering why they act out, or there's this mental health aspect of it, if we don't get our healthcare in order, we change the dynamic. The other side of it is education, and I'm gonna put this as a split, because I think education and after school programs do change the public safety conversation. We're not giving our young men and women anything to do. There's nothing for them. There's no opportunities. There's no place for them to go. There's no place for them to express themselves. So when we look at the lack of education or even resources towards education, we end up creating more of a dynamic in our community. And I'm gonna steal Antonio's shine a little bit. I'm gonna go 4 instead of 5, that I think that small business and job creation do go hand in hand, because I worked at a pizza shop, right? I owned a laundromat when I was young and lost it because of 9/11 and the fact that all of these businesses tanked. And the way we build back this city is not through corporations, it's through going back to the basics. And those are my top 4, because I do think, like to Antonio's point, we can't go no further than that.
Thank you. And Ms. Council, I'm so glad we have you back. The question on the table is, what are your, in ranked order, top 5 priorities for the Borough of Brooklyn?
Yes, we had little technical difficulties there in this new era of virtual space, but I made it back. Number 1 is housing, and that's all encompassing. It deals with the homelessness, it deals with the affordability issue, it deals with everything, because Brooklyn, of course, is now rent burdened. And I'm very much concerned about what's going to happen on December 31st when the moratorium on eviction expires. We have to also begin to have a conversation about COVID relief and how we're going to support all of the communities. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their income, people are in danger of losing their housing. Small businesses have been decimated. And so we're going to have to make sure that we are creating an environment where small businesses have rights and they can survive and thrive. Public safety, of course, is a top issue. And so we need to revisit public safety systems and create systems that actually protect and serve not just some, but all people. We all know, everybody sitting on this panel know that the current system disproportionately affects Black and Latino communities. And so we have to make sure that we are pushing the NYPD, we are decriminalizing the NYPD. So I said housing, I said public safety, I said COVID relief, I said education, healthcare. Khari wants to say that he's the only person up here with healthcare. Well, my church, when St. Mary's was closed, meals, we started our own clinic in our parsonage. So we had services that we were providing to the local community when that situation was created. But we also have to think about healing. So many of us have gone through so much in this season. We're grieving, whether we're grieving the loss of life, or we're grieving the loss of our freedom, or we're grieving the loss of our income. We have to take the space to pull back and deal with the grief that we're all experiencing in 2020.
Thank you for that. And for those of you who are listening in, I was taking notes. And so I was able to write down the top 5 priorities for each of the candidates. And I hope you were as well, because as a voter, I can now take my top 5 priorities and see where they fit along with the candidates, which candidate is most reflective of what I think is the most important areas of focus and need for the borough. And so this is the beauty of ranked choice voting, is that we're able to really see which of the candidates, how many of the candidates align with our own individual voters' priorities as voters. And so our next question is, we're talking about ranked choice voting. This is a new system. We at the Center for Law and Social Justice have long supported and advocated this type of system. And yet we have the reality of our current electoral process in the city of New York. I will not editorialize on that much. I think we all know what I'm talking about with some of the challenges, particularly in boroughs like the borough of Brooklyn, which is, and I say this with all pride, one of the Blackest boroughs in the country. And I really, we're talking about the Pan-African community. We're really looking at Brooklyn as one of the greatest congregations of Pan-African people of almost anywhere in the world outside of the continent of Africa and the country of Brazil. And so when we're talking about that being our borough, full of people of color, and we're seeing a history of the electoral snafus that we have seen over the past several elections, it can be worrisome, and it can be a bit of a balance that we have to strike. And so my question for you is, what would you suggest? What steps do you think need to be taken in order to better prepare electorally underserved communities for a shift to ranked choice voting? And so I'm going to start with the middle row, which is purely unscientific, but this is what we're doing. Councilmember Reynoso, what steps would you suggest that need to be taken in order to really ensure that these communities, which are traditionally underserved, well, stop editorializing. What would you suggest should happen?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a commitment from everyone on this panel to be a part of the process of educating the communities that we intend to vote for us. I think that we can't allow for government to be the only entity that is looking out for the interests of the people that are voting. And I do think that everyone that wants to win this election wants to make sure that if they have a voter going into the booth, that they know exactly how to vote for their interests. So I think that a lot of money from these campaigns is going to move to educating voters. And I think that's going to be something that's extremely important. And when you talk about just the Blackest borough here in Brooklyn, I think that's valuable too. We actually have about 5 or 6 Black candidates running in Brooklyn right now. They would be, right now, the establishment will be asking them to drop out one at a time to ensure that there's only one Black candidate, so that they don't split the vote, so they can ensure that there be a Black borough president. Instead, they can all run, they're not stepping on each other's toes, and we can get more diversity in opinions and in issues, which I think is actually going to help the Black population, or just the Black and brown population, making sure that they're not a monolith, they're not one type of people. They have many issues, and now we have more than half of the candidates being able to show that through ranked choice voting.
Thank you. You're stealing one of my next questions.
I'm sorry. I got your notes too. That's what Robert thinks. Everything is a conspiracy, so maybe that's it.
Oh man. All right, Assemblymember Simon, what about you? What steps should be taken to ensure the voters are prepared for a shift to ranked choice voting?
Well, I agree with Antonio that this is on all of us, right? And I think that that's actually always true of candidates. Part of what you do when you run for office is to educate people about who you are and how you will serve the community. And I think that that's important. And I think it's how you would make that selection with RCV is even more important. And so voters tend to get confused. And I find that to be true of voters all over. And many voters don't even start thinking about the race until a month before. And that's something we can't change necessarily, although I think absentee ballots and early voting are changing that dynamic quite a bit. But I think that we have to demand that we get good design, for example, on the ballots and on those absentee voting envelopes. It made a big difference in the general election versus the primary to have better design of the envelope. But there's a real role for the Board of Elections as well as the Campaign Finance Board to play in terms of education and materials. And then it's up to us to disseminate those materials along with our own when we're running for office and explaining to voters how it is that they can make those choices and make them in an informed way, and be free to really talk about what their preferences are. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Ms. Fields, coming to you next. What would you suggest should be done in order to prepare voters for this system?
Basically, the two council members have said it all. We need to do outreach in order to instruct people how the ranked choice voting is and explain to them how it will benefit them. That's why I put some of it on my website so far right now. And as I gain more information, I'll continue to give it out to them, because people can't do it if they don't know how to do it. So we need to start letting them know how to do it, when it's beneficial, if they have questions, where they can go for questions, and basically just get the word out.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Councilmember Cornegy, coming to you next. What should be done to prepare these voters for this new system?
So when I think about new systems implemented in this country, I often think about how the federal government had to actually have laws to protect from disenfranchisement in Black communities. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on, yes, my responsibility as a candidate in educating voters, but also the resources from the city, state, and federal government, the resources from the administration that are necessary. I've been around long enough to witness having to work hard to disseminate information in languages for everybody. We're the most diverse place in the world. And I'm not certain. I have a reasonable expectation that we'll be able to get some kind of education system in place, but I'm very concerned that people who do not speak English, our seniors, there are people who will be disenfranchised without a robust education system and timing on that system. So, I'm cautiously optimistic about the implementation of ranked choice voting and the education system. Yes, it's incumbent upon us as candidates, but there's a larger context here. I've been around for all kinds of campaigns. We just did, campaigns together around trying to make sure that people were aware of everything. We were talking about that off and how much money was actually spent to get people to participate in a process. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the timing on implementation for ranked choice voting and about the potential for disenfranchisement in Black communities, in minority communities, in non-English speaking communities. So yes, a robust outreach, but with a solid understanding that I've been around long enough to know that the federal government implemented voter rights legislation because Black people were disenfranchised in this country historically from their vote. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Yes, robust education is important, but timing is also important as well to protect us, our non-English speakers and our seniors.
Thank you for that. Mr. Ramos, coming to you. What should we be doing to prepare the voters?
Well, we should have been doing already. Honestly, we should have once it passed, people should have known we were having elections. And so, the BOE, the city council, the mayor, everybody, assembly, everybody should have been already putting out information, educating everyone in their languages. Right now, we are at a point where it's going to be soon, and we have to honor the vote by the people, and we cannot spend time trying to say, oh, we shouldn't have it, because then you're disenfranchising the people whose vote already. So you can't do that. So we're under the gun, and that was whatever fault that was and where it lies. People can have their opinions, but for now, the BOE has to do their job, and they have to put out that information. You can have forums just like this, and people are home. There's 145 people here. If you have a whole bunch of these, you can reach the people you need to reach, along with elected officials, instead of people sitting there complaining about it not working and how the problems that it might cause, take that time to actually educate your constituents. You can send a mailer to them that explains everything you need to send, that you need to do. You know, so instead of trying to fight it, be part of the process and be part of the solution. Non-for-profits, you know, you have many non-for-profits organizations in the city who can educate their members and educate the communities that they serve. Schools, just we talked about, you know, the census going to, you know, the lines for people waiting for food. Do the same thing. Go to where the people are. Go to schools. Give out the information in school. I get stuff from my kids' school all the time. You know, give it to schools, have them distribute it to their parents. Give it to daycares. I'm a daycare worker for 18 years. Give it to us. Let us give it to our parents. You know, take it to where people will be. You know, even if you got to go to a barbershop, you got to go to the laundromat. You know, you got to go to the supermarket. Stand outside. Hand it to them. Take it to them. Don't just wait for them to come to you. And like everybody said here, the candidates, we have to do it. We have to educate the people that we want to vote for us. And not just, you know, telling them who we are, but they have to know that they can have other choices and they have their right to choose and put in the rank that they want to put them in. And we should encourage that because like it was said before, all of our opinions here are important. Everybody had their top 5, but every top 5 was important. Every one of them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
The last thing I would like to say is voters are smarter than I think people are making them out to be. You know, they understood what it was to do a mail-in ballot, right? And they were able to do it, and even to do early voting. So they adjusted. So don't, you know, think that they're not smart enough to understand to put 5 people in an order to base they like it.
Thank you for that. We have often at the center said, if you can play spades, again, I've said it before, you can, you know, if you can play checkers or chess, you can do this. But we need to hear from 2 other folks. Ms. Council, I'm coming to you next. What do you think needs to happen in order to educate the voters?
We have to prompt it to the point of overkill, the same way we did with the citizens. We have to use all of the mediums that are available to us, and we can look at this as an opportunity. We know what the time frame is. We have 6 months in order to make sure that everybody understands what this process is. So we have all of these technological advances, and you know, we have, as Robert just shared, you know, you can put it in the kids' backpacks and have them take it home. We have 400 different languages that are spoken in this beautiful borough of Brooklyn, so we need to make sure that everything is multilingual, and we need to make sure that we are using, you know, mail, text, social media, robocalls, every single medium that is available to us in order to get the information out. So let's look at it as an opportunity to engage. Let's look at it as an opportunity to educate. And, you know, as Rob said as well, we have to make sure that government is doing what it's supposed to be doing and the agencies that are responsible for getting this information out. And we need to create the partnerships that we have in the past with community-based organizations. So we just do everything that we can to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need in order to understand what the process is.
Thank you.
To the point of overkill.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards, coming to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers game, Antonio is correct, right? You're talking about 7 of us running 37 new council seats, probably 10 candidates per council seat. Like, you're literally probably talking about close to 2,000 candidates who I think that, you know, CFB, if you're choosing that route, or BOE should mandate that, you know, we're the platform in which we educate the voters, right? You know, Antonio's my guy, so I get his mail, and I get Jamani's mail, and I get Eric's mail, and I get all these guys' mail. But how about giving us an opportunity to put that on our mail, getting us a chance to, as we reach out to each one of these voters on behalf of ourselves, that we're kind of, our responsibility is educating them on that, not being a choice, but being almost a mandate in that respect. And to the other points that my colleagues make, look, I'm in healthcare, right? It's the hardest thing in the world to get people to take flu vaccines. It's the hardest thing in the world to get people to wash their hands. How did we work that marketing with no money? The same way, conversation, word of mouth. And then when people feel it is a priority to their understanding, if you tell folks that you don't have a choice in voting, by not doing this, they're going to find a way, to Mr. Ramos's point. And so I do think that there needs to be a multitude of options that we use, but I do think that it has to start with us and every one of these candidates looking to achieve a new higher office, because there's close to about 2,000, maybe more of us pushing that envelope, and it's our responsibility. And I think that's the way we start, because until we come out of an economic crisis, we can't look at it as the smoking sensation and doing ads everywhere. But I do think that we are the best billboards going forward.
And I want to thank all of you for that. And I would just add, apropos of nothing, that the city just ran a citywide census campaign, which many of us were a part of. And as a result of that, created an infrastructure that allowed organizations that many of whom had never received city funds to be empowered with materials, funding, education, to be able to go out and spread the good news about census, go census. And so that infrastructure still exists. And so we should be mindful of that when we're thinking about the ways in which this could look. We still have access to those organizations. There are still folks on the ground. And so it's been wonderful hearing from each of you, because I think we're all agreed that this is yes on the candidates, yes on the city, yes on nonprofits, and it's that marriage of each of those sectors and faith-based communities, frankly, the marriage of each of those sectors that really can make this as successful as possible. And so now I want to skip into a little bit about what ranked choice voting allows us to do that traditional voting models do not. Because ranked choice voting focuses on the campaigns on issues rather than opponents attacking each other, there are opportunities to have conversations about policies that may center the needs of your immediate base, but also speak to the needs of people who may not necessarily be who you initially think of when you're thinking about who your base of voters are. And so my question for you is, are there issues that are ordinarily considered taboo or too hot to handle that you think ranked choice voting might allow you to campaign on or talk more freely about? And as a suggestion, the defunding police campaign and conversation. And I don't want to pigeonhole us there, but I just give that as an example that many have felt is just, I'm not quite comfortable with this. I personally am, but just, from an electoral space. So are there any issues out there that you might not need to talk about in a traditional winner take all campaign that a ranked choice voting campaign does allow you the ability to address? And who am I going to start with here? I'm going to start with Khari, Mr. Edwards. You raised your hand. I'm going to you. What is it that you can talk about now under this system that you might not necessarily discuss in a traditional winner take all?
Well, I think it's more about the demographic in which we are campaigning, right? I think that it's not about what we can't talk about, but before, I don't have a base. I don't know if Kim or Ms. Fields has a base, but the reality of what it is that when you go into certain communities and you're able to have a conversation that is important to them. So I really wouldn't pigeonhole it by saying certain issues, because I think that regardless of what, if we go into the Muslim community, right? If we go into the LGBT community, if we go into even the Black or white communities, there are issues that are important to them that if we had a base in those separate communities, it wouldn't allow us to step out and understand what other people's issues are. So I'll take something like housing, right? And we all spoke about housing as an important piece, right? And so some of us that are in East Brooklyn and North Brooklyn, when you get over to Assemblywoman Simon's side of town, the Bay Ridge side of town, and you look at our Asian brothers and sisters who are living in more deplorable conditions of housing than even some of what we're dealing with in East Brooklyn, it broadens the conversation and the understanding. So I don't know necessarily if I would go into categories, as more as it gives you an opportunity to learn from everybody, because you have to now reach everybody to win this race.
Thank you for that. Assemblymember Simon, what do you say about that?
Now that he's talking about my district. I think that we all need to have these conversations. And I think that, certainly in my community, there was a lot of conversation about defunding police, for example, and a lot of support for Black Lives Matter throughout my district. But I also think that there are issues that affect all of us, and they will affect all of us a little bit differently. And the way we get to working together is to understand how they affect our areas differently, our lives differently, and the intersectionality of those issues. And, you know, one of the public safety and gun violence, for example, is a huge issue. It's an issue that I've done a lot of work on in a variety of communities. I know that Khari has done that as well. So we need to have that conversation, but that conversation might be a little different from one community to the other. The same with housing, obviously. In my district, we have vast disparities, right? I have public housing residents. I have people who have been in really, really old apartments where literally, if you walk into the vestibule, you don't have enough room to change your mind. It's so small, right? So, but yet we have very big luxury departments and a huge amount of brand new development that is very luxury oriented, for example. And what you find is that, you know, the need for housing is critical, and we need to address those issues, and we need to find ways that we can do that in a way that works for the people who we intend for it to work for. And I think one of the problems we have is that we have good intentions, but we also adopt policies that don't actually do what it is we need to do. And I think we will be better able to come up with policy decisions and policy programs when we talk to more people about how these issues affect their lives.
Thank you for that. Ms. Fields, coming to you next. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think that it makes it easier to discuss different subjects with the different people, depending on what neighborhood that you're in, because you don't know the issue the way they see it unless you get in the area and discuss it. And now that it has ranked choice voting, you won't be seen as an outsider or a traitor or whatever cuckoo thing someone can come up with. You're just trying to learn what the issues are and how you can help them. So it's about being open and being able to connect to different people on the level that they would be able to discuss these issues with you. And this way you can go out and see how you can help them and get the issue resolved.
Thank you. Ms. Council?
The beautiful thing about the mosaic of the city of Brooklyn is that you can go all over the world and never leave the borough. And so one of the beautiful things that I appreciate is, like, you know, we have, all of us, we all have our issues that are important to us. And oftentimes what I find as I'm having conversations with constituents, with voters, is that the things that we prioritize are priorities to them, but they're also concerned about quality of life. So this allows us to broaden the conversation, and it gives us an opportunity to have conversations with individuals about things that may not be our top 5 priorities, but will also be priorities, but may not be the things that are splashy and sexy, but are as important to the voters and the people that live in the community. I remember I was having a conversation with a group of people in Bushwick, and, you know, they were like, you know, and they were like, well, can we stop getting fined for being double parked? Can we look at the alternate side of street parking issues? And then when you have a conversation with people that live in, let's say, Bensonhurst or Borough Park, you know, like they have crime, but their crime is burglary. So this pushes us to think outside of the box, and it pushes us to have the types of conversation that will then force us to think about how do we approach these things from a different perspective. So.
All right, thank you for that. Councilmember Cornegy.
Yeah, so I think about this a little bit different. I haven't been anywhere in the borough, whether it's from Canarsie to Cobble Hill, Bed-Stuy to Bensonhurst, where everybody doesn't want to be publicly safe, where everybody doesn't want a pathway to safe, quality home ownership or housing, where nobody wants to have sanitation not be an issue. So I think that, you know, my top 5 at least are germane and applicable in every corner of the borough. So I'm not tailoring a message to different places. I'm talking about public safety. There's nowhere I can go where people don't want to be safe. If you talk to families in Marcy projects in Bed-Stuy or people in $1 million homes in Bath Beach, they all want to be safe. They all want good quality of education. So I don't know, but I'm confused with the question a little bit, because I haven't had to tailor a message anywhere I've been in the borough of Brooklyn, because everything is synonymous. We are actually more alike. You talked about the Great Mosaic. We're actually more alike in our needs than we are in our differences. So I'm sorry if I didn't answer the question, but I think about how I transverse the borough, and there's nobody that doesn't want to be publicly safe or want good quality schools for their kids or want sanitation and not to see mounds of garbage where they are. So I don't know if I answered the question, but my strategy is never to tailor a particular message to a particular community. We all have overarching decisions and views on the borough and what the vision for the borough is, and they're more synonymous than they are different.
So I guess just to be clear, and I'm going to ask just a clarifying question. Do you find that your constituents who are dealing with rampant amount of say, gun violence, think about safety at the same rank level that your constituents who are concerned about a completely different type of non-violent violence, if I can even make that type of category? It's one thing to have a conversation about safety, but do you find that you're having the same conversation, or is that conversation itself teased out a bit by the different circumstances that different constituencies exist in?
Certainly it is, right? So in Bed-Stuy, the amount of gun violence is certainly different from the amount of gun violence in Brooklyn Heights, right? But the overarching message is still about how are we going to keep this borough safe. For Bed-Stuy, they want to make sure that policing in their community is not devoid, it doesn't violate their civil and human rights, right? So that's a different conversation, but it still falls under safety. So the top 5 priorities are still those priorities. The way you address them in different communities may be different.
Could you please repeat it?
Thank you for that. Someone's echoing. Hi.
That was Siri, unfortunately. Sorry.
Hi, Siri. Welcome to the forum. Mr. Ramos, how about you?
Well, yeah, I like to say that when you go around the borough and you talk to everyone, you get everybody's point of view. And as was mentioned before, I do think there are overarching topics that everybody have, but like you pointed out, the topic may be a little bit different, right? People want public safety, but like you said, over policing is also an issue. And so you have to address it to that community in that way, and then in another community in another way. So you can't always paint the broad brush. I'll give you an example. You know, I sent out my Facebook page, and somebody from the LGBTA community responded to me and said, "Hey, I didn't see nothing on the LGBTA community on your Facebook page and your website." And I have, you know, issues that I am passionate about. I hadn't put it up yet. And I explained to him what they were. And he was like, "Thank you. That's wonderful. You know, I'd like to be part of it. Like, I like to be involved." And so, you know, we all have our top 5, but there's other people that have theirs, and there's people that have their personal issues and that affect them directly. And you may, you know, understand it and you know it, but when you speak to that person, you get a much better understanding. And so you can better address it the way that it should be addressed. And I think ranked choice voting makes us do that. We can't sit back on, you know, the friends and family we know, or the people that we work with, and the community that I grew up in, right? I grew up in Brownsville. I live in Flatbush. I work in Canarsie. I have family in Sunset Park and Bushwick. But those aren't just the people that I'm going to represent. I'm going to represent the whole borough. So I'm going to have to go to Marine Park and Cobble Hill and Brighton Beach, and I'm going to have to talk to those people, and I'm going to have to represent them, and I have to know their issues. And they, you know, they grew up differently than I did sometimes. And then we do have commonalities. And so I need to know our commonalities, and I need to know our differences so I can represent them to the best of my ability as a borough president.
Thank you for that. And I believe Assemblymember Reynoso, I need to give you a chance to respond to this question, and then we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into the current lawsuit that is pending regarding RCV. So Assemblymember, I'm sorry.
Don't give him a promotion. He's still a council member.
I think Joanne will tell you that that's not a promotion necessarily. Who wants to go to Albany? No. I would say this though. I think that whoever answers this question the best is going to be in the top 3 of the members of Brooklyn. I think it's I'm a very progressive candidate. I got issues and things that I care deeply about that I think are very important that don't translate as well in other parts of the borough. So the common denominator conversation is important, but I think that the messaging conversation about how nuanced do you have to be to make sure you can get your messaging and your point across and that you could win on the narrative is going to be paramount. So look, I'm figuring that out now. I haven't put, I know what I care about. And like, for example, the public hospitals work that I'm going to be doing is going to be very central to my campaign. And I'm going to be pitching that all over. But my transportation policy is something that I got to think about, so that I could speak on it in a way that can educate folks that it's foreign to. In Williamsburg, if I say, defund the NYPD, they love me, they understand it, they get it. I don't need to say anything else. But when I go to another district, I have to reword that or rephrase it so that I can educate and inform people in a different way. Whoever does that the best is going to do great. But we never had to do that before. Before, I just paid to my base, get my 35%, and I'm the borough president. Now I can't do that. I gotta go to Rob's district. I gotta go to Khari Edwards' base. I have to talk to Kim Council's people. Now I'm forced to have a more broader conversation and have more nuance on my positions in order to be able to relate to people and have them vote for me. So again, I think that is going to be paramount to how and whether or not we go far in this campaign.
I will note that one of the attendees said that sounds like culturally responsive education, and it certainly does ring true. I want to turn now to the Kendi lawsuit, and yes, you all, I've been watching your comments in the chat. I know this is a burning question for a number of you. And for those of you who are not sure about what I mean when I say the lawsuit, and I'm actually going to ask that everyone mute themselves. I do hear a bit of an echo. If you're not familiar with what the lawsuit is, you should know that in 2019, ranked choice voting passed again, as we said at the beginning, overwhelmingly on the ballot with over 70% of the voters supporting it. And according to the Board of Elections, it won almost every Black, Latino, and Asian assembly district, with many of them reporting upwards of 75% in favor of the proposal. So that's sort of the historical backdrop. And then this week, there was a lawsuit that was filed by several members of the Black Caucus of the City Council, who are raising some concerns that ranked choice voting may further disenfranchise communities that have historically been marginalized at the ballot box. Today, the New York Times reported that there was a suit filed in New York State Supreme against the Board of Elections and the Campaign Finance Board on the contention that they had violated the law by failing to adequately explain the software that would be used to tabulate the votes. And for those of us paying attention to what happened at the national level, we know that this can be a thing, and by failing to conduct a sufficient public education campaign. Having heard all of that and based on your understanding about what this referendum was about, what is it, how would you respond to that concern? And do you think it's a fair or honest criticism? And what would you do in response? And I'm going to start, let's see, I'm going to start with Ms. Fields, and then I'm going to try to follow this. My screen is jumping a bit, so hopefully I will be sure to catch all of you. Ms. Fields, what do you have to say about what's happening with the lawsuit?
I don't know why it's happening. I think that if they were concerns, they should have brought it up at the time when it was voted into place. So now that it's happening, yes, we do need to make sure that the education get out there to everyone, but it's here and we want to do it. The people voted for it. So the people who filed the lawsuit, they're the ones who need to explain more, because it looks to me like they're more concerned about keeping the status quo, keeping it the old way so that we never get a chance to do ranked choice voting. But I think that we should keep ranked choice voting and the lawsuit should be dismissed, but maybe Councilmember Cornegy can explain better because he's part of the lawsuit. So this way we can understand why it's there, because I don't really understand it myself, being, one of the outsider people. So maybe he can help us to understand it a little better. So maybe I can see it from their point of view.
Well, Ms. Fields, I can't go to him next because then I will lose order. But trust me, we are going to hear from the councilman as well. Mr. Ramos, I'm coming to you next, and then we will be going to Councilmember Cornegy. Mr. Ramos?
Hi. I think that it's just people are afraid of a change. People are afraid of something new. And I think people are trying to lay groundwork to be able to say that when results come out, something that we saw on a national stage, right? Somebody laid some groundwork to then say that when the results didn't go their way, they had a reason to go and say, I'm not accepting the decision and I'm going to sue. And I think that this is that. It's something of a similar thing. They're trying to create the confusion and make people feel that something's not going to go right with the election. So when things don't turn out, they can have they can feel like they have a platform to say that I'm not going to take the results and I'm going to sue and things like that. I believe that we have to honor the votes, and we have to honor the decision that the citizens made, and people want change. They want the change in the federal government. And I think people are tired of the same old, same old. They're tired of career politicians just going term after term, going from one position to another, and sometimes even going back to an old position, and even sometimes jumping back to the position they had before and not doing anything while they're there. And I think that is what that vote was about. It was about wanting to see everybody else have a chance, wanting to have a choice, more than just between two people, a whole choice that they can say, I want one of these five. And I think we have to continue and honor that. Like I said earlier, filing lawsuits or doing all types of things to stop it, instead of spending that time doing that, educate the people. Do your job as a elected official to educate those people. Because when you want to get elected, they get educated about you. They learn who you are. So if you want them to know something, they're going to know it because you got elected by letting them know who you are and what you wanted to do. So if you want them to know about ranked choice voting, you can do it the same way you got yourself elected. So I think we have to just stop it, and we have to go forward and not be afraid of change, because that's what the voters wanted.
Thank you. Now, Councilman Cornegy, you are up next on my screen, but you have also been name checked already. So I want to hear from you what your response to that statement or to that question is, and if you have a response as someone who is participating in the lawsuit directly.
Oh, absolutely. So I agree with ranked choice voting, clearly. I believe that the pandemic, however, has slowed down the process for education. As I stated at the opening, my advocacy for slowing this process down is based on 9 out of 10 seniors in my district not even knowing what ranked choice voting is, not asking what the process is, but not ever knowing what it is. There was, I chair housing and buildings currently, and we've had an education process for site safety training that we had to push back because of the pandemic. There was no training that took place. All sites were closed. So if we were willing to do that as a council, and something as monumental as a vote, which I agree with, so you can't get me on I'm not for, I voted for it. I believe that it is the wave of the future. I believe that the process that needs to be robust for education, especially for our seniors. If you ask in your respective districts and in your respective bases, most of you, especially if you're representing Black and brown communities, they have no idea what ranked choice voting is. And to me, that's tantamount to voter disenfranchisement. Again, my beard lets you know that I've been around long enough to see the disenfranchisement and the disengagement of the Black vote. And I'm not willing to sit by idly to let that happen. So yes, I will be a part of, like I was of the census. I was out in the street, rain or shine, promoting the census, getting people to sign up for the census. I'm not scared of hard work. I'm just saying, and just to the point that we have 6 months, that's not true. The first elections that ranked choice voting will be are the special elections in February. It's December. You have to educate poll workers. You have to get the information about changing the machines, not only in the city, but from the state, you have to get permission. I don't see how we have enough time between now and February to educate voters enough to participate in a new process that I agree with. So I am not, listen, I'm not unfamiliar with promoting myself anywhere and throughout this borough. I've been elected twice, but quite frankly, I've lost more elections than I've won, just for the record. So, but I know how to campaign. So this is not gonna help or hurt me personally, but I'm not willing to disenfranchise, like I said, the non-English speakers in our borough and the seniors in our borough are a process that has not yet risen to the level of good quality, robust education. I believe that we spent upwards of $50 million on a census campaign. When we interviewed or had a meeting with campaign finance, they talked about a minimal amount of money that's being invested in the education portion of this. 50 million for the census, and we fought tooth and nail, me and Kim Council and you, Lurie, and a whole bunch of us did a yeoman's job with that amount of money and was still exhausted every single night trying to get people to understand the importance of the census. So we did that work to exhaustion over an extended period of time through the pandemic. There was no education during the pandemic, zero. So I'm saying I'm not willing to force a system that I voted for on a electorate that's not prepared to participate fully in it. So I agree with ranked choice voting. I can campaign on my own. This doesn't make me better or worse. What it does is potentially disenfranchise every single voice of every single voter in every single corner of the city of New York. And I'm not willing to do that.
Thank you for that response and for informing us on your perspective. Councilmember Reynoso, what are your thoughts?
It's a couple of things. 9 out of 10 seniors in Robert Cornegy's district also don't know who I am, right? And it's my job to make sure they do so that I can win this election. Every campaign, especially campaigns to get elected, where you have the most selfish form of promotion is to get yourself elected. Usually only takes about 3 months of work to be done. You have 3 months where you put in all your money and all your resources to educate as many people as possible so they can vote for you, right? And if an election can happen that quickly and you think that you can get enough people to know about you to get elected, which is something that you won't sacrifice because it's a self-interest, I feel like we can do that in 6 months. We could do the same for our election for ranked choice voting. So I think that, again, the onus falls on us. And I think the biggest disenfranchisement that this city has at this moment with the current election system is runoff elections. Runoff elections, which see a significant decrease in the amount of Black and brown voters that come out to vote in a second round. It decreases significantly, so much so that when Tish James was running for Attorney General, for public advocate, I believe, I don't know exactly which race, she was in a runoff election and she won more votes in the initial run, but because the drop in the amount of Black and brown voters that come out on runoff elections was so low that everyone was panicking, giving her money, a lot of resources to make sure that she doesn't lose a race simply because of the disenfranchisement that the current system institutes in making it so that the Black and brown voters are not heard the second time around. They come out the first time, the second time they do. That is the largest disenfranchisement that we've ever had. And I have to say it, I don't think this is Robert's intention, but there's a mayoral candidate who right now is in second place in the city of New York. And this benefits them because ranked choice voting shows that there are 3 or 4 candidates that once they start getting eliminated, all those votes go to one particular candidate, and it affects the second place candidate who will and can win in the first round. So again, I think that this is all for naught. I want to get to educating people. I think it's actually unfortunate what we're doing. I think that it's unfortunate that it's happening in Brooklyn. I want to be clear that out of all the people in that lawsuit, 6 out of the 8 or 4 out of the 8 are all from Brooklyn, and they're all Black members. And I just think that what that's going to do is scare people, especially Black communities, that something is up and is going to insert doubt in this process, and in doing so can actually disenfranchise.
Actually, something is up, and for the record, one word: pandemic, right? Which has shifted the way that we educate folks. Like, we cannot run ripshod over the education process. Antonio,
I appreciate your point.
I know. All right.
Nothing like our girl Kristen Welker at the presidential. That is time.
No. My bad. I'm sorry.
There will be hopefully more of these forums and conversations so that we can tease some of those things out. And thank you, Councilmember Reynoso, for that. Assemblymember Simon, I'm going to come to you, and then Ms. Council, you will be the last respondent for this particular question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Edwards. Charge it to a very busy head and ears that hear my children yelling downstairs and not my heart. So Assemblymember Simon, I'm going to come to you, Ms. Council, and then Mr. Edwards.
So you wanted to know about the lawsuit,
Yes.
my thinking about the lawsuit. So let me just say, number one, I started out as a teacher, and it's about voter education, and we need to be about education. I think if we talk about educating, we will have a different framework on this conversation. There are a couple of special elections that will be sort of trial runs, for lack of a better term, and those are predominantly in Queens, I believe, right? And they're like more bite-sized pieces. So we're not bringing it out to the entire city right off the bat. We're doing a couple of special elections from which the Board of Elections will learn. You know, one of the issues that was raised earlier is the runoffs. I think that's a very important point, in that if we don't have runoffs, which we would have at the citywide level, right, which is enormously expensive, turnout is reduced, and generally speaking, it's a runoff between two people and the relative positions don't change. Ranked choice voting changes that entire dynamic, so that that it's not just the one, it's an automatic runoff in that way. But I also think an issue about this is that the comment that people don't know what RCV is. That's because nobody's called it that, right? People don't know that name, but we can explain it very easily. You just tell people, he's my number one, she's my number two, they're my number three, I'm your number one, somebody's your number two. People used to do this in school board elections for years and years and years and years. And you know what? Everybody knew how to do that. And so I think we need to just say, hey, just like the old school board elections, a lot of people remember that. It's not hard. It's a really easy thing for people to do. And I think we can do this. And I'm confident that we can do this. We have so many elections going on in the city, council races with a bazillion people in every race. This race has a whole bunch of people in it. If we are all talking about this, people will get that message.
Thank you for that historical reference. Particularly and in light of the special or runoff elections, the costs that it would take to, I've heard from Campaign Finance Board, we've heard that there's been upwards of perhaps 500 expected candidacies. Thinking about what that will look like with 2/3 of the city council turning over, if there are runoffs, that will cost money, that have to happen. That just helps us to balance the interest a little bit. Ms. Council, coming to you, and then Mr. Edwards, coming to you, and we'll give you the last word on this particular comment. Ms. Council, and I hate to say this, but we may be getting the Sandman hook because we are on a time frame and a limit. So Ms. Council, I'm coming to you. Mr. Edwards, those of you who submitted questions, I want to thank you in advance, but these questions are specifically for the ranked choice voting topic. More substantive conversations will be taking place with the candidates at a later time. Ms. Council?
Reverend Kim is going to hit it and quit it, so you're going to have two seconds. All right, Mr. Edwards. I think that when I hear about the lawsuit, it brings me back to term limits. And I remember when the constituency vote, the voters voted that they wanted term limits in place, and overwhelmingly they voted for it. And then the mayor decided, we're in such dire straits, so we're going to overturn the will of the people. So we have to be very careful when it comes to these types of things. We can look at it as a threat, or we can look at it as an opportunity. And I think that if we approach it as an opportunity, and we're well educated and we're able to have the conversations with our constituencies and make sure they're going to talk to us, we're going to explain to them what the process is. We're going to hold government agencies accountable to make sure that they get the information out. But I think it's very dangerous when we work to overturn the will of the people. And if 75% of the public voted for ranked choice voting, then the onus is on the agencies and us to make sure that everybody understands what's going on.
Mr. Edwards, are never forgotten. Please share with us your points.
So I had a debate with my wife last night about this, about ranked choice voting and us being prepared. The reality of it for me is this, right? I understand where the fair factors are from the Black and Latino caucus, because as Brooklyn in general changes their demographic in their power structure, the thought process of losing the ability for Black and Latino candidates to run an election and win in this process makes it a scary place. So Antonio said it a good point. There's about 4 or 5 of us running in this particular one. So we're going to ensure that either Mr. Ramos, Antonio, myself, Kim, Rob get a chance to still represent our communities on the whole. What I do love about this, though, is that we are going to be able to prepare ourselves for when that happens. It's not happening now. When we look at our mayoral, our controller's race, our borough president's race, there is a diverse representation of minorities in this. What we're afraid of is down the line. And what we have to do is get this thing right now. And what I'm saying is that the special election in February, the one in March, will prepare us for the big one in June. And I do think that we need to hold on to ranked choice voting as this standard going forward. So I don't agree with the lawsuit. I think it's just that we're going through a fear of change, but we have to do this because I'll be honest with you, if we wait till the next 4 to 10 years, then there won't be as many of us on this panel running for office. And that's what we should worry. If we do it now, then we get to understand how do we incorporate and recruit more women, more people of color into this process so that we're prepared going down the line. This is the perfect time to do it because we have a great diverse group here, and this is what the city is supposed to be about. So I'm all for us going forward and making this thing happen. And the city council, they'll deal with that. They could deal with that another time, but let this thing run through.
So with that, I just want to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation for being able to participate in this conversation with each of you. And I think that one thing is clear, which is that we need to be having more of these conversations. We need to be teasing out some of these finer points. And now that we are sort of talking about the framework of ranked choice voting, we need to have more conversations that are going to center specific issues and how they are impacted by this type of electoral system. But I want to thank all of you so much. I know we are on the Brooklyn Public Library's clock, and our beloved librarians who are among the heroes in our communities, they need to go home, and all of us who have children hear them crying. I'm not going to call out the council member Reynoso who had to leave. He's got a new baby. We get it. All of us do need to get back to our families, and so I am very grateful to all of our attendees who participated, to Common Cause, and all of the phenomenal groups that helped to co-sponsor this event. I'm going to turn it now back over to the people behind the curtain who are masterfully spearheading this. And again, for those of you who had questions that were more substance-based on particular issues, this night was really about ranked choice voting. And so we will have hopefully additional opportunities to do deep dives into those issues. And so I thank you all for participating and for coming out. And I'm going to turn it back to, was it Becky? Who am I turning this back to? Let's see. I'm turning it back to the Common Cause host. Or Sean, Susan.
Hi all. Hi
I
all.
was about to do a stand-up routine. I don't know.
Not sure. I can't seem to hear Sean, but thank you everybody so much for coming. Oh, there we go. Sean.
Thank you all for coming. It was a lively discussion. It was great to hear from all the candidates. Candidates will be reaching out to you. For the last 6 months, we've been doing trainings so that you all know how to and understand how to campaign under ranked choice voting and have the best practices. We will continue to do those. Folks who have joined us this evening, if you have organizations that you would like to have us present at, you can find all of our contact information at rankthevotenyc.org. And thank you all so much. And thank you to our partners.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks to everyone, and much love, appreciation, and best of luck to all of you. Brooklyn will be in good hands regardless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.